I mean, lots to get through today, and we have to start with the very serious note of the ongoing COVID issues and the postponements and the impact it's having on football, and of course the Premier League as clubs continue to grapple with the crisis. At this stage, 3 of the 4 scheduled Premier League games are going ahead today. Of course, Aston Villa's game with Burnley was called off little more than 2 hours before the scheduled 3 p.m. kick-off yesterday due to an increase in cases in the Villa squad. Now, we know that the Premier League are going to meet next week to discuss the ongoing crisis. And after Arsenal's win last night against Leeds, Mikel Arteta called for clarity from the Premier League. Darren, let's start with you. I mean, he's not the only manager to have asked for some clarification and for a clear steer from the Premier League. I mean, currently the decision to postpone games is made on a match-by-match basis, isn't it, by the Premier League board. Is that the right way to go, or would a one rule for all approach be fairer and better, do you think?
I think it's getting to a stage now where we do need a blanket decision. I mean, to be fair to the Premier League, they were very helpful this week. They set out their position. They explained that decisions are taken on a case-by-case basis. The rules state that if you have 14 or more players, that you can play. But what we saw after the Premier League had set their position out was that a number of other clubs reported cases. In many cases, testing on the day revealed more and more players to have had tested positive. And I think as far as the Premier League are concerned, they're in a very, very difficult position because what they're trying to do is get games staged. What we don't want to have is a situation where there is a backlog of games, where the integrity of the competition is compromised. They're doing their best to try and make it work. But set against that, we are getting rising numbers of cases, even in clubs where players have been vaccinated. And so I think as far as the Premier League are concerned, it is an invidious position they find themselves in. We've seen Eddie Howe now call for a decision to be taken. We've seen Thomas Frank now call for a decision to be taken. And I think we'll continue to see more and more managers say, look, this is rapidly becoming an untenable situation.
Lianne, let's bring you in. Where do you stand on this? More and more games are being called off at the moment, but other games are going ahead. There's talk of a potential break, but for you, should the show go on where possible?
I think, obviously, from a football fan's perspective, everybody wants the games to continue because we know how much joy it brings to everybody, you know, when the fans are back in or watching it from home, you know. But at the same time, you know, Darren mentioned about a backlog of games. You know, you look at Tottenham now, they've probably got 4 or 5 games to make up. It's impossible almost to be able to fit all those games in, especially over the Christmas period. But unfortunately, as much as it pains me to say, I do think a break is probably necessary because we don't want a situation like yesterday with the Burnley game. You know, there's fans that are travelling all the way to these games and they're finding out an hour before the game. That's unacceptable, in my opinion. You know, even it's not good enough, is it really, to find out an hour before the game? I suppose the
difficulty is if they're testing on the day and results take a while to come through, that's as soon as they can announce it, isn't it?
But still, it's not good enough. This is the Premier League. You know, the footballers, they've got everything at their disposal. You know, the tests should be done quicker. You know, I'm not saying that footballers get preferential treatment, but you can get testing back quicker and stuff like that. And I think, you know, the fact that we're waiting till an hour before the game to cancel games, from a player's perspective, is not good. And I think now we're at a point now where we're expecting games to get cancelled. You know, we're looking at the fixtures, and last night when I was watching Match of the Day, I was like, why is it only 25 minutes long? Because there's only one game. And that's not good, is it? So, you know, at the end of the day, people's, you know, duty of care and their health is the most important thing. But I think we're going to see more and more games getting called off because training grounds are getting closed. We've seen Manchester United, we've seen Tottenham. You know, there's other teams that seems to be spreading quite quickly. So, and the health and safety of the players is the most important thing.
What impact does it have on the players? You mentioned them, you've played before. What impact does it have?
Well, the thing is, I mean, when a game gets called off or during this time?
Yeah, when the game gets called off.
Oh, it's awful because, I mean, thankfully in the women's game now we play at better stadiums, but I remember our games used to get called off all the time because we never had that underground heating and all those things that the Emirates and stuff have. So it is quite annoying when the game gets called off because your body thinks you're still playing, so the adrenaline is still there. You know, you think, oh, and to play the next day, we saw it in the Champions League during the week, the game got called off based upon, you know, the snow and stuff like that, but it does make a difference. But at the end of the day, professional players, they know exactly what to do, but I'm sure the anxiety around the training grounds and around the football clubs are getting more and more, because we saw with Chelsea women this week, you know, the outbreak that they've had, and we're going to talk about that later in the show. But at the same time, it's not good, because I'm sure we all feel quite anxious in this day and age, because even someone like myself, a lot of people think I'm like delusionally upbeat and never think anything's going to ever affect me. But even I'm a little bit more, you know, scared at this moment in time, thinking, no, should I go there? Shouldn't I go there? So for the players that are playing football, they're going to the training ground, they've got families at home as well, haven't they? So we're all human at the end of the day, and I think I agree with what you were saying earlier. You know, almost the decision has to be taken out of the players' hands. And as much as we don't want the game to stop, over Christmas, Boxing Day, it's one of the most amazing times, isn't it? We'll sit down watching football or going to games, but sometimes, you know, these things can't be helped.
Well, Jules, shall I take you through a couple of papers and just...
please,
because a lot of what Lianne's been saying a second ago is covered in a couple of the pieces in the papers. I'm going to start with Stan Collimore's piece on the back page of the Sunday Mirror, Cancel Christmas, and the headline, well, if you look at the subdeck when it comes up on the screen, I think it says that 6 of this weekend's 10 Premier League games have been cancelled. Games were cancelled last Sunday, last Tuesday, last Wednesday, last Thursday. The 20 Premier League clubs, as we know, are going to meet tomorrow. Captains are going to be involved in the conversation as well. And they're going to discuss their options. And the move is towards getting the season done, getting games played. But just in the interest of balance, yesterday's papers, the West Ham Vice Chair Karen Brady was talking about trying to get games finished. Leeds Managing Director today, Angus Kinnear, he's been talking in the papers again with a similar viewpoint, because the optimism and the determination within the clubs is that we need to get these games staged.
But Darren, these games finished with fans in there or behind closed doors?
Well, that'll be a very good point, and I'm sure that will come up. We're seeing in Germany at the moment that is the case. They are playing games behind closed doors. And I think part of the problem in this country is that we want things always. We want to have games staged, we want to have fans in stadia, but we want to claim to be keeping people safe. And I don't think you can do one thing or the other. And that's why I want to just stick with this, because I know we haven't got the graphic on screen, but inside on Stan Collimore's column, he says, look, I played on Boxing Day on a few occasions. And he says, what I don't want to hear, he says, I don't like it, I don't want it, but neither do I want to hear that someone has died because football stadiums were packed 3 or 4 times in the space of 12 days just because of tradition. And I think that's a very key point that all of us have to bear in mind. He also makes a point about the integrity of the competition and games backing up into January. I know you sit with the players every other Wednesday. You hear what the impact of having too many games within a short space of time can do in terms of fitness, in terms of, as you were saying a second ago, the mental and psychological impact as well. We also know, however, that Richard Masters, the Premier League Chief Exec, he has written to all the clubs saying we've got to get this season completed, just like we did last year. It is a bit of a mess because obviously the season then spills outside of May if it does have to get completed. If there is a break, there are so many logistical problems in World Cup year as well. So we can see why it is a huge, huge problem. But at its root, we keep going on about fans being the most important people in the game. We have to keep fans safe, and we've got to find a way to do that. And if we can't do that, then I don't think there is any other alternative.
Can I just interject as well, Darren, as well? Because with regards to like the teams and having to get this season played out, I understand that we all want that to happen. But I think what happens if we see a situation where the players are having to play academy players? We saw Everton do it the other day and it worked out not too badly, didn't it? But that wasn't based upon COVID and they drew 1-1. But what happens if we see a situation, because you're talking multi-millions of pounds that potentially could be lost because teams are not being able to field a team, having to go to an academy maybe, like if Tottenham were told they have to play and all their players have COVID, or, you know, it's breaking out through the training grounds, next season they might not make the top 6.
And that's the integrity issue again, isn't it?
That's the
so
integrity
then it's like,
issue,
if I was a team that had that problem, I would feel a little bit hard done by, because I'm like, actually, we need a break right now. Someone else hasn't had the outbreak. Thankfully, they haven't. But at the same time, we have. So I don't think it should be held against the team if they have a COVID outbreak.
I think all of these issues will be discussed tomorrow when the Premier League clubs meet, when the captains meet. They'll be able to paint a complete picture for the people whose job it is to make decisions around all of these things. And I think everything will be on the table, and then we'll get more clarity. You guys on Sky Sports News will get more clarity about where we go from here. But we do need some leadership I think, in terms of making one blanket decision rather than a piecemeal decision, which is leaving so many fans up and down the country so unhappy.
Yeah, it's such a complex issue, and it's ever changing, of course, as well, isn't it?